Welcome back to another edition of Ari Squared. We are your hosts, Ari Lev and Ari Berkowitz, coming to you guys on a Tuesday this time. Ari, first things first, how you been, my man?
Oh, been good, been good. Not exactly happy to have not been shaved or been shaven, but beside for that, everything's been pretty good. Uh Enjoying the last few weeks of non-football. We just had a message in our fantasy football group saying, "Wait a second, guys, when are we drafting?" So apparently it's that season already, which feels crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's definitely wild that where was it? The Hall of Fame game is like really coming up soon. Like we are maybe 2 weeks away from that, maybe even less. And so it's pretty wild that we're here. General managers are, starting slowly but surely to take a breath and, hopefully, fingers crossed, get through to training camp without anybody else getting arrested. But as we know, somebody always is. And that's, always fun to do. Now, before we go any further, Ari, reminder to all of our listeners, please go ahead and subscribe on YouTube at Ari Squared. You can find us on Instagram as well, of course, on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Hit the share, give us a 5-star review, hit that subscribe button, and most importantly, share it with your friends, family, and fellow NFL fans. So that's where we're holding today. Ari, really excited to be recording with you again. And let's go ahead and start out with some news that has come out of the NFL. So let's talk about first things first, Ari. Let's talk about the Seahawks sale. Now, you had, when we had chatted about this earlier in the week, and you had said something to me, and I was like, wait, what? And then it took me a moment to understand why you had said what you said. So why don't you go ahead and share with your listeners when we had discussed the news, what you had said to me.
I said that I'm weirdly in the mood for coleslaw now, and you did not
it took me a moment.
You did not quite get what I was getting for aiming at. I'm not exactly sure how the man's name is pronounced. Back in India, as he is originally Indian. I'm sure it's a much more guttural sounding KH. But in America, they pronounce his name as coleslaw. So, it was pretty close and made me quite hungry, I got to say.
So, a few interesting things that came out about this sale. Number one, there was certain thoughts that they would actually crack the 10 billion mark, which they didn't. Ultimately, they did sell for 9.6. I mean, the profit that was, turned on this franchise. I mean, it was purchased in the 90s for, I believe it was $196 million to then go ahead, fast forward 30 years later and to sell it for $9.6 billion. That is quite the return on your investment. And that's putting it lightly. Also, I do always find it interesting when you have these minority owners on other teams and then they ultimately make a bid and go and buy a team on their own. And in this case, it's really interesting because it's a division rival. So for our listeners who are not aware, Mr. and Mrs. Coleslaw actually are minority owners in the 49ers, and they will need to sell their minority stake. Obviously, they cannot own a piece of one franchise and own another franchise in its entirety. So they will be going ahead and doing that. And one final tidbit, and this is why I mentioned Mrs. Coleslaw. So as it has it, Mrs. Coleslaw is going to actually be the one running the day-to-day owner operations of the Seattle Seahawks once this team is finalized. So those were just some tidbits that came out of the sale. I think it's safe to say at this point that the next NFL franchise that goes up for sale, which as per previous conversations and podcasts, you believe is going to be the New York Jets. I think they're going to be, no matter who the team is, I think the next NFL franchise to sell is going to cross the 10 billion. And if we just in comparison, compare between the Washington Commanders, who were bought for $6.05 billion and now We've got the Seahawks going for 9.6, which is a whole 3.5+ billion more. Following that thought process, we should be looking at north of 12 or 13 billion for the next one that goes up for sale. Wild times ahead for sure. Before we move on, Ari, any thoughts on the Seahawks sale?
Well, I mean, you brought up so many absolutely fascinating angles, Ari, and so I'd like to even say that one of the most interesting things to me is the fact that in order to get cachet today, to be even considered to purchase a football team, you probably have to be a minority stakeholder in another team before, because of how many people just want to get in and how much it's a boys club. And to that extent, just the fact that like the Yorks and DeBartolos, who have owned the Niners since I think the 70s, but around that time, and basically their entire worth is connected to, like, they don't have, what you were saying about the value of a NFL franchise and how immense it is. Even a few years ago, it's probably close to doubled, since Harris and Blitzer bought the
Commanders.
Was it Harris and Blitzer that bought the Commanders?
I believe it was.
Yeah, so even since that, and basically the fact that there are these old school owners who all their worth is tied up in the franchise's value, and it gets a little bit, like, to me, sticky. It's like Jed York and DeBartolo, like their value is the 49ers, and the 49ers is their value. Like, is that really what we want from football, or do we want more of the Paul Allen and the Vinod Coleslaw situation, where these guys are independently very wealthy, and therefore they will spare no expense in order to improve the football team in any which way? So I don't know what the answer is. I definitely think it's a conversation worth having at some point, but that's just where my head went with all of the fascinating tidbits that you just shared.
Thank you. All right. Final question for you on this topic. Why, in your opinion, were the Seahawks not purchased by either Bezos or Musk?
Well, Musk, I think, is very busy these days. But also I don't think either of those people would ever get approved by NFL owners, honestly. I don't think either have any interest in being a minority owner for years in order to get approved. They're both the kinds of people that when they join any kind of industry, they want to be the top dog, and the NFL would not allow that. You have to sit and wait your turn and bide your time and be very, basically not say anything for the first maybe even 10 years of your ownership. And Elon Musk cannot do that. Like, it's not even possible for him to do that. So that's basically my take on why either of them, I don't think, are going to be owners anytime soon.
Okay, well, look, time will obviously tell. I do know that Bezos's name, when it was originally announced after the Super Bowl, that the estate of the previous owners of the Seahawks were putting it up for sale, Bezos's name was certainly floated out there, especially given the fact that it's a Seattle team. But with that being said, I hear you. I hear how I don't think the Jerry Joneses of the world are very into the thought of having either of them own an NFL team, especially not Musk. But time will tell, and it will be a matter of time till probably one or both of them end up owning an NFL franchise.
I think they're more interested in owning like nation states than NFL franchises. You know what I mean? Like,
fair enough. All right, I think we can move on, Ari. I think that, originally we were going to have a quick opening about this, and that turned into several minutes. Nonetheless, fascinating conversation on it. But as they like to say, yalla, let's move on, which brings us to our next segment. So, Ari, why don't you tell our listeners what we've got coming up in this next segment?
Yes, absolutely. So in our next segment, as promised in our last recording, we're going to go through our wide receiver rankings. Now, basically, we decided to, again, do things a little bit. There's just such a heavy level of fascinating and super talented players at the wide receiver position right now that we had a very hard time limiting to even 15. And so we decided to go 20 deep and really do it in 5 tiers of 4 players, each of slightly different calibers and expectations. And we'll go through each one, and we can have our discussions about why each player landed in a specific category, and just go through the immense talent similarly to corners in the NFL at the receiver position. It's really quite astonishing. And honestly, one of the most astonishing parts is you go through the list and the amount of divas at the wide receiver position compared to the talent level is like the lowest it's ever been. We have way more Hines Wards and Marvin Harrisons today than TOs and Chad Johnsons. Like that. That's the crazy thing about the receiver position to me.
It's interesting, apropos what you just said. So the New Heights podcast just closed out. Shout out New Heights. Shout out Travis. Shout out Jason. They just ended season 4 because this time of year, as they approach training camp, and Travis is just very focused on the upcoming season, they go on a break and they end their season. So they've had incredible guests the entire season. This specific season finale was with none other than Tom Brady. And so he referred to one of the things they spoke about, lots of things. Fascinating episode. But Tom Brady basically coined the diva wide receivers as the equivalent of the Real Housewives of the NFL. So I thought that was a great comparison. And it's really good to see that the Real Housewives are, lessening, but at the same time, yeah, you kind of need that TO where he's going to score a touchdown and pull out some ridiculous celebration that he is going to get fined for, but they don't care. It was all part of what made the league so much fun and what made those types of receivers scoring touchdowns fun. With that being said, yeah, there's no more room for these divas. Respectfully, this whole, I'm not getting the ball enough. Me. It's bro, you're getting paid millions upon millions and upon millions of dollars in contracts. You play in the NFL. You've got crazy endorsement deals. If you invest your money right, you're setting up yourself, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and probably a few more great-greats on there of your children. So keep your head down, practice, put in the work, and really be the number one wide receiver, both on and off the field.
Well said. And with that, we can get into our first or last tier of wide receivers, where we decided to go with George Pickens, Christian Watson, Alec Pierce, and Jalen Waddle. Now, what's interesting about this whole group, it's kind of like George Pickens is what we and Alec Pierce are kind of like what we think Christian Watson and Jalen Waddle could end up doing this coming season. And Pickens and Pierce basically have to do it again in order to solidify themselves further up the list. All of these guys they have all of the physical traits. They've shown what they can do. They've all taken over games at times. And Jalen Waddle probably into the most interesting situation for him now in Denver. But no one's going to confuse them for, maybe Pickens for a second and Alec Pierce for a second last year, but no one's confusing them for the top 4 or even 8 guys on our list. And but they were too good to not be included on the list, and that's why they're all here. Ari, what do you think about this last tier and what their value is to their teams?
So what I think the thing that stands out to me most about the players in this tier, or I would say is the specific player within the tier that surprises me most, is Alec Pierce. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is the contract extension he signed in this offseason. Now, if we went based off of money, Alec Pierce should be in the top tier. But the reality is we have him in our 5th tier. And so, yes, like you said, he's got to do it again. But the Colts clearly decided that they saw enough there that they believe that he can, justify his contract. So in terms of the most interesting name on this list, yeah, Alec Pierce without a doubt. And George Pickens has got to decide to actually show up all 17 games and play for a full 60 minutes in all of them. And if he does that, while technically speaking, he's a number 2 wide receiver, the reason why he made our list to begin with is that if he actually doesn't quit during a game, he's first-tier talent. And that's why, although he's in the bottom tier, he did make it to our list. Now, Ari, to do something fun, since we mentioned diva wide receivers, and no, this wasn't originally part of what we were going to do with this rundown, but since we spoke about it, let's have some fun with this. Of our bottom tier, who is your diva of the 4? Pickens, Watson, Pierce, and Waddle.
Oh, it's clearly Pickens. As tempted as I was to just go with Alec Pierce because that would have just been funny. It's clearly Pickens. And he's the exact problem with why the NFL has tried to eliminate the diva, situation, because when it goes bad, it's just bad for everyone. When it goes good, it's super entertaining. It's great. When it goes bad, no one has patience for it. And George Pickens, if he would have not performed last year, instead of finding himself in a situation where he, can make a boatload of money, he'd probably be a step away from being out of the league. Like, that's the problem with these kinds of players. I think that there's no question that it's George Pickens in this group.
I completely and totally agree. And yeah, Ari, you're absolutely right. And then we'll move on to our next tier. Pickens, there's a reason he's on the franchise tag. And he really, this is his make or break. He is either going to play lights out, get a hell of an extension, either from the Cowboys themselves or from another team, or he may very well struggle to get himself on a team until late into training camp next season because somebody's wide receiver gets injured. That is the trajectory of where he is heading. So he's really got to get his head in the game. All right.
One sec, just before we go on to the next group, we didn't even say anything about Christian Watson. And to those that are like, why is Christian Watson here? I just want to go say, check up he was hurt for a lot of last year, but check his snap count and his production per percentage of snaps that he had on offense. It is as good as any receiver in the NFL last year, albeit he did not play a lot of games. So when he's on the field, he is a dynamo. He just has to be on the field longer. So hopefully he can finally do that. And with that, Ari, move us into tier 4.
All right. So moving into tier 4, we put Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin, Ted McMillan, and A.J. Brown in this mix. I would say is that A.J. Brown is, to me, probably the most interesting person on this list because Zay Flowers is finally putting together in Baltimore. We'll see what a coaching change does, if he takes a step forward, takes a step back. Terry McLaurin, we know, is a really, really dynamic wide receiver 1 with the Commanders. And if he gets Jaden Daniels back for a full season, he's really going to take a step forward. Ted McMillan, he and Bryce Young continue to show a very strong bond, and that should only, take another step forward, especially with their offseason additions. Which again then brings us to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown on a new team. Thank you, Diana Rossini, for making that happen. And he's with the Pats now. Now, while Vrabel is generally known as a no-nonsense kind of guy, he's been up to a lot of nonsense this offseason and apparently dating all the way back to 2020 and COVID with Diana Rossini. But stepping away from that and focusing back on the player, A.J. Brown also, this is say what you want. There was a million different versions of the story of what happened in Philly. Was it Jalen Hurts? Wasn't it Jalen Hurts? Was it Sirianni? Was it not Sirianni? Was it A.J. Brown himself? Was it the offensive coordinator and not getting the ball? The bottom line is that he was not being a very good teammate. His shenanigans certainly outplayed, no pun intended, his actual play on the field last year. And he's now on the Pats. And while is Drake May going to love having him there? Absolutely. But if it's more of the same on the bench, he too, just like Pickens, is going to wear out his welcome very quickly with the Pats. But that's kind of my breakdown on this tier. Ari, who stood out for you most?
So, I mean, I just think that first off, Terry McLaurin is just one of the most underrated players in the NFL, period. Regardless of position, he just puts up numbers every single year, and he is such a consistent receiver. He has all the traits that you look for in a number one receiver, and he's just a great player. Tet McMillan, I mean, as a rookie, what he did, crazy, just crazy. You know, the amount of rookies who have 70 receptions, 7 touchdowns, and over 1,000 receiving yards. I mean, we'll see more of them in a little bit further up our list, but it's almost unheard of, and it definitely was completely unheard of just a few years ago. So that's all I have to add on tier 4. And I'll take us to tier 3, which we have Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Emeka Egbuka. And the fascinating part to me about this tier is that 3/4 are from the same draft, and then a different 3/4 are all Ohio State guys. So that was really cool to me about tier 3. We did not do this on purpose. It just ended up this way. If we were doing it on purpose, we would have Terry McLaurin instead of Drake London there. So we would have 4 Ohio State boys in one group. But it just speaks to the crazy level of talent that Ohio State produces in their receivers. And again, what's fascinating about it is McLaurin and obviously Olave, Wilson, Egbuka, none of them are ridiculously big. If anything, they're on the smaller size for outside receivers today. And the combination of hands, route running, and gritty toughness is just, you can see how far it takes you in the NFL. And honestly, whether it's Olave and getting who he's had, terrible quarterback luck early on in his career, and despite that has put up phenomenal numbers, but not consistently. Garrett Wilson with the injuries, and I don't even want to call it terrible quarterback luck, just terrible quarterbacking, has been plaguing Garrett Wilson, and we know he has it in there, but we need to really see it. And similarly to Emeka Egbuka, like he had an just like McMillan this past year, unreal rookie year, and then he was just hurt. But if there is anyone in the NFL right now that I think could be what JSN did last year, it would be Emeka Egbuka. So, that's how nuts and deep this tier is. And Drake London has just been improving year over year and becoming like the dominant beast, Mike Evans type that he was supposed to be when he was drafted, and he's there now. So it's a nuts tier of guys that you can see that it's all just dripping with talent already in this tier 3.
Adrian, by the way, you missed one of the 3/4 of tier 3, which is 3/4 of the wide receivers in this tier play in the NFC South.
Oh, there we go. That's awesome.
So very interesting how that kind of played out. And honestly, that was not intentional. Chris Olave was a very strong contributor to my fantasy league win last year, where he was like a forgotten wide receiver. Everybody had written him off when Spencer Rattler was throwing to him. He did not look like anything special, and then enter into the Shug era, and Olave just really returned to glory and did great. They're all coming into their own, and I think they could really all individually cement with a solid season. And you had mentioned the JSN of this list. I think that I agree with you. It's Emeka Egbuka for sure, but in terms of just taking their games to whole new levels, I do think that all of them have the potential to do that, and we'll see from there. I also think that unlike our first 2 tiers where, George Pickens was the clear diva in tier 5, AJ Brown was the clear diva in tier 4. If I'm looking at London, Olave, Wilson, and Mekabuka, like, I don't really see a diva wide receiver here, and I would even struggle to actually name any of them a diva. So, and if we look at their tenure in the NFL and how long they've been in the league, like we had mentioned at the top of this, the days of the diva seem to be, moving along. And that's why, to me, it's a very interesting thing to see that the talent is there, but we left the diva at the door. So it's kind of nice to see. And I hope to see that our trend continues. Although coming up in our second tier, there are some divas / diva issues in there. So with that being said, is it my turn to go with tier 2? It is. Right?
Go for it.
All right. So in tier 2, we have CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, and Malik Nabers. And this to me is an interesting tier for a few reasons. So CeeDee Lamb has absolutely cemented himself as a top tier number 1 wide receiver. There was certainly conversation of putting him into tier 1. And for that matter, we could have also put Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, and Malik Nabers. They all technically could have gone into tier 1 without a doubt. The way I look at it is this. CeeDee Lamb there is really no reason to think why he is not going to have another incredible season, although I do truly hope that Dak Prescott's arm falls off and CeeDee Lamb tears his ACL. As a Giants fan, just kidding. I don't actually wish injury upon anyone, even if they play for a division rival. But what's interesting on this list also is, will Justin Jefferson bounce back? Because and yes, I do definitely, blame that on the quarterback play that he had. And now let's see whether it's Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy, whoever ends up winning that battle. Let's see if they can get it back to the Kirk Cousins to Jefferson type numbers. Nico Collins has got to stay healthy. Really, really got to stay healthy. And for Malik Nabers, as much as it pains me, after that second surgery, reports are now saying that he may miss the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, which would obviously hurt. But I do have faith A in Harbaugh and B in the other wide receivers we brought in, whether it's Mooney, for example, or Kelvin Austin. I think, especially also with Malachi Fields, I do think we can hold down the fort until he gets healthy, and I don't think he should be rushed back. If I had to give diva to one of these guys, as much as it pains me to say it, it's going to be Malik Nabers. If you look at some of the things he said on podcasts, especially during the draft when we took CeeDee Mawanoa, and, well, yes, he comes to work. He is definitely probably talked the most when he hasn't done it long enough to really kind of play that role. But unfortunately, as a Giants fan, Malik Nabers is my diva in this tier. Ari, thoughts on tier 2?
Yeah, I mean, we've officially entered the stage of the rankings where every single one of the guys from here on out can beat you on multiple levels and multiple different ways. Meaning these guys excel in the short passing game, in the screen game, in the middle of the field, and obviously on longer receptions. And beside for that, they also excel as unbelievable route runners, getting through press coverage, getting the ball at a high point and speed. So they can all do multiple different things in order to get open. As everyone knows, the ways you get open: size, speed, route running, and all of these guys have at least 2 of those that they absolutely excel at. And that's why they're in tier 2. And just there's kind of one thing: Nico Collins, the health; Nabers, the young, inexperienced and the health; Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb had down years. And as you said with tier 3 is why you won fantasy, The reason I lost fantasy is because I had Justin Jefferson and Malik Nabers, and I thought I was a genius for pulling that one off. But yeah, I lost. I was in last place. So yeah.
It's funny, just on fantasy before we move into our top tier. I remember after I drafted in fantasy, and like this was the first time I played fantasy again in years, and ultimately end up to win the Super Bowl in my league. But my draft grade from I think it's Yahoo Sports gave me a D, and we were joking around in our group chat from the league, and like some other guy said, "Oh, I got a D. I'm probably going to win," and it came so true. A lot of the times, when you ace your draft, like you probably did last year, you don't win, and then I, who got a D and looked like I had a crap draft, ultimately went on to win it. So just apropos on you thought you were a genius, well, there you go.
Yeah, the only difference is that I always think that I'm a genius, so that's the other problem, Ari. Anyways, into tier one, we got the what's the word for it? The usual suspects for tier one.
The creme de la creme.
Yeah, absolutely, and these guys are the guys that they've just done things that no one else has really done. And the list is Puka Nacua, JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Ja'Marr Chase. They are they've all had a season which they've looked like the best receiver in NFL history in that season, and they've been doing it year in, year out, and continue to do so. And we honestly don't know how many more seasons, similarly to Myles Garrett after last year being the age that he is and now moving to the Rams. We just don't know how many more years they could actually put in, peak Hall of Fame level seasons. Each one of these four, it is a ridiculous level of talent and production that they all combine, and they're all super young.
So true. And you know what else stands out about this list, Ari, is the fact that if you look at the list, not everybody on here is even a first-round draft pick. I mean, Puka Nacua was taken in the 5th round. Amon St. Brown, if I'm not mistaken, was taken in the 4th round. Ja'Marr Chase, of course, was taken in the 1st, as was JSN. But these guys are just really, really, really just incredible wide receivers who year after year have built, just continue to build on their talent. And if we're talking about St. Brown for a moment, he has like the work that he put in, and like his dad was both him and his brother's coach, and the work that their dad made them put in to be the best of the best, taking, reps on the jugs machine every single day, day in, day out since they were kids. And they didn't get to the top of this list because of, being lazy or relying on, their merit, or, oh, I'm the number one and I'm the best. And they really went ahead and put in the work. But to crown a diva from this tier one, and it's actually not hard because the other three are not divas in any way. It is Puka. I like to bite people Nacua. Puka, I'm an anti-Semite Nacua. Puka, I just went to rehab Nacua. And if you have any other middle names you want to give the guy, go ahead. But he is absolutely the biggest diva in this tier, and certainly can, he's up there in the top 3 of divas on this list overall. So those are our rankings in terms of the wide receivers. And I'm excited to see how everybody on this list performs. And what I'm even more excited to see in a way is who is going to crack this top tier or top tiers next year. And is there a rookie wide receiver that all of a sudden we're going to see make this list next year? So like always, it's going to be super exciting. And like with all of our other rankings, it's really going to be fascinating to see who rises, who falls, and which new people are going to make it on this list. So that wraps up our wide receiver breakdown. And Ari, that was a lot of fun. Any final thoughts on this before we move on over?
I was just going to ask you if you thought any of the rookie receivers like Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr. I'll add Denzel Boston, and even though he wasn't a first-round pick, most people had him mocked in the first round. Do you think any of them, and who would you think out of those could possibly make it into the top 20 for next year?
So I think that's a great question as a general thing. If there was one, and again, health is going to play a major part in this, and you know where I'm going with this, Ari.
Absolutely.
It would be our boy Jordan Tyson, who went to the Saints. If anybody's going to do it, well, the others again, and they all certainly could. If I had to place a bet and actually put money down on it, again, so long as he can stay healthy, Jordan Tyson, without a doubt. If he can stay healthy, man, oh man, he will not just crack this top 20 list, he will probably cement his name in it for many years to come. But, bro, he's got to stay healthy.
Well said, Ari. And would you like to move on to our next segment, which will be about the NFC North?
Yes, and not that you left much room to not move on to the next segment after putting it that way, but yes, let's keep it moving. And yes, let's go ahead and move on through into our NFC North preview. Reminder to our listeners, or if you are first-time listeners, Ari and I have been going through the different divisions and breaking them down one at a time. Today, we are doing the NFC North. If for some reason you are not aware of which teams are in this division, they are the Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, and the Minnesota Vikings. And this was a division that not long ago had not one, not two, but three teams that had won over 10 games. They also had two teams that had each won over 14 games in a season, which just made the playoff rankings wild, where week 17 week 18 that year, where the winner got the first seed and a bye, and the loser became the fifth seed, which was just absolutely wild with how that played out. And this is going to be a fascinating division as always. But Ari, if you had to rank, just cold rank right now, the team in this division, how would you rank the NFC North?
So I want to throw it back to you, and I want to ask you a slightly different question that I feel like is a little bit more challenging to answer, and then we'll get back to the rankings.
Classic Jew move, by the way, at answering a question with the question. Nice.
Oh, well, it just comes with the territory, Ari. And
you are a Jew.
If anyone was questioning that. And before we do that, I just want to say I was a little spaced out because when I was thinking about Carnell Tate before the end of the last segment, I could not remember for the life of me who the other receivers on the Titans were, but I digress. So basically, what I'd like to ask you, Ari, is if you had to choose one coach from the NFC North who has the highest chance of not being a coach for that team following this coming season, who would that be? That is my question to you.
Ooh, that is a great one. Looking at this list, it would have to be LaFleur of the Packers. And I know that sounds wild, but Ben Johnson is a recent hire to the Bears, and he's ascending. There's no way they're getting rid of him. While the Detroit Lions have had some surprising coach firings over the year, even after playoff runs, I mean, Dan Campbell is in full essence and body the coach of the Detroit Lions, and I cannot see any other coach being as successful there. And really, are you really going to fire KOC with the Vikings? I mean, come on. There's no way that's going to happen. So it's a rough question, but I'd have to lean LaFleur, and maybe second to that in a shocking move, Campbell with the Lions. But that was a great question, Ari, and really I had to put some deep thought into that. And yeah, if we're talking about coaches on a hot seat, this is probably the division where it probably doesn't get cooler on the coaching hot seat than it does for the coaches. in this division. But Ari, I know I asked you a question before that, but I'm going to have to throw this question right back towards you because it was just that good.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And I think that this division is kind of like the one stick that you lift up in the entire NFC that, depending on the direction it goes, will kind of dictate the rest of how the NFC plays out. And what I mean by that is, as we all know, the NFC East has as like the most fuel to coaches getting fired, both organizationally and where some of the teams are at. But that being said, you look at the NFC South, and you have teams that either just fire their head coaches, like the Atlanta Falcons, or are moving in a very positive direction. And basically, you can make a very strong case that 3 out of the 4 teams there could make the playoffs, or at least win their division. And then you have the West, which basically all 3 teams except for the Cardinals are very much in contention to make the playoffs and win their division. And then you look at the NFC North and you say to yourself, one of these teams must end up being like bad, not just like mediocre, but bad, because the NFC, it's just there way too many. There's only 2 teams right now, and that's the Falcons and that's the Cardinals, that I'd say there's no chance of them making it to the playoffs. And who knows with the Falcons, honestly, they could surprise everyone. So the NFC North, yeah, I think LaFleur has more of a chance of, but mine would be KOC. That's what I think. And I don't think it would be a firing. I think it would be a parting of ways, some kind of, splitting up. I genuinely think Kevin O'Connell will end up being the Jets head coach next year. To anyone who's like, wow, why is that? That's just crazy. Darren Muji and Kevin O'Connell are best friends. They were college. Darren Muji is the Jets GM. They were college roommates, and they're buddies. Kevin O'Connell went on record this offseason praising Muji's moves. Like, which coach have you ever seen praising a different GM and of a team and his moves and the overall direction of the franchise? It's weird. And I just think that the Brian Flores thing, as divas go in the NFL, as talented as he is, will start to crumble, and their quarterback situation is very, very strange. Any one of them could be top 10. They could have no starting quarterbacks capable of competing. And then, as always, the NFC North, I think, will come down to which teams can stay the healthiest. And right now, depth-wise, and now I'm going back to your first question that you asked me, I think the Packers are the deepest team. They've been drafting the best out of all of those teams in the division year over year for the last 3 to 5 years. And if I had to rank them, I'd put the Packers first. I'd put the Vikings second. I'd put the Bears third. And I'd put the Lions last. And that's how I'd have it. But again, I think that division is going to surprise everyone and produce one low win winner of the division, and the rest of the teams everyone's going to be asking, did the Lions really do enough to keep Dan Campbell? Is Ben Johnson actually as good as we thought he was? And Kevin O'Connell, maybe it's just time to move on. And that's my hot take for the NFC North.
Well, that is a scorching hot take, Ari. And I also just have to mention, you said that aside from the Cardinals and Falcons, anybody can really make the playoffs in the NFC. I have to say that the reason why the Falcons won't make it is because Michael Penix is their quarterback, and I don't think they're going to make it. So I've been sitting on that while you were talking for the past 2-3 minutes. I've been sitting on that one and had to get it out. So, but moving back seriously over to the NFC North for a minute, if I had to rank the teams here, my rankings would be a little bit different. I do think I would have the Bears at the top. I'd have the Packers after that. I'd have the Lions third, and as great as KOC is, as great of a DC that Flores is, And as good of a defense as the Vikings had, I do not believe, not in Kyler Murray and not in JJ McCarthy. And if there's going to be a team in the division that is going to have negative, like under 500 in terms of their win percentage, it's going to be the Vikings. So they actually came in last for me in terms of that. And it will really see. As much as KOC is a quarterback whisperer, and we've seen people revive their careers after being under his tutelage, whether it's Darnold, whether it's Daniel Jones. Like Mr. Call of Duty is not going to amount to anything. JJ McCarthy, the best thing he's going to ever do in his career is be a meme. And I just don't think that they have what it takes. And if we take their third string QB, what's his name? It escapes me, where he had, I think it was 5 completions in the game he started last year. So I
thought they signed Carson Wentz to be their third string quarterback.
Did they?
I think so. I'm fairly confident that it.
You might be right, because we had spoken about having 3 first round draft picks,
3 top 10,
right? Top 10 in there. And think about it, like Murray was 1, Wentz went 2, and JJ McCarthy went 6. Wait, sorry,
10, yeah. I know because they traded up 1 spot with the Jets to pick McCarthy at 10. The Jets dropped back 1 spot to pick Olu Fashanu at 11.
Am I crazy in thinking that it was Bo Nix who went, or am I confusing them?
I think Bo Nix went 12 right after
the
Broncos.
Right,
weirdly, Michael Penix went before all of them at number 8.
Hey, yeah, shockingly.
The Falcons had just signed Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that was a genius move. Genius move right there.
Oh yeah. It's it really makes you blank on the direction of the Falcons franchise, if you catch my drift.
There you go. So Ari, if we going through the teams here for a moment, if let's say give me an X factor for each one of these teams that will either propel them to the playoffs or have them below 500. Who's your X factor for each team?
Well, I think for the Green Bay Packers, the interesting thing to me is their X factor is Matt LaFleur. I think that if he, the way that he coaches and his style of coaching, he has the potential to galvanize an entire team. And as long as they're healthy enough and not even fully healthy, just like we saw with Malik Willis when he played last year instead of Jordan Love, they, to me, have the best chance of winning that division. So LaFleur for the Packers. The Vikings, I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not sure if I would pick Justin Jefferson or if I would pick Kyler Murray as the X factor there. But I'd have to say pass on the Vikings and who their X factor is. And for the Lions, I think that it's going to be all about the running game. I think Jahmyr Gibbs can turn out, especially because that division is going to be tough and cold, and it's going to get into December. We all know that. And Jahmyr Gibbs can really solidify himself as probably the best running back in the NFL with another year like he had after the last 2 years. And he's the Lions X factor. And then for the Bears, it's going to be if one of the 3 guys they took last year, was it last year or the past 2 years? I can't remember. Romo Dunze, Colston Loveland, and Luther Burden. If one of them can step up and, pretty much compete with the number 1 options, Nacua and JJ and even Christian Watson on the Packers, if they can step up and be that guy for Caleb Williams, then I think that the Bears could really take that next step. But we haven't seen it yet. And I've been very disappointed with Odunze. I thought he was going to show a lot more last year, and he didn't. But he's hella talented, and who knows what he can, put together with a full off season with Ben Johnson. So those are my X factors. I'll ask you, how would you rank the quarterbacks in this division, Ari?
Ooh, Ari with the excellent hard-hitting questions. Okay. Ooh, that's a great question. All right, I'm going to go with Jared Goff at number one. I just think that he's the most proven. He's, as much as he lost in the Super Bowl, he's been to the Super Bowl. He's the most consistent. He's done it for long enough. So I'm going to go Jared Goff, 1. I'm going to go Caleb Williams, 2. I'm going to go Jordan Love, 3. And then at a very, very, very distant 4, after those 3 guys, the winner, if you could even call them that, the winner of the QB competition with the Vikings, Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy, would be the really redhead stepchild of the group at number 4.
That's awesome. I have much appreciation for that. Well, cool. I really like the way that we covered the NFC North and how potentially crazy of a division it can turn out to be. If you have nothing else to add, I'm more than happy to move into our next segment, Ari.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. And now it's another time for another round of Guess That Number. This is a fan favorite. I enjoy it a lot. To remind our numbers, Ari went with number 4. I went with number 10. It's funny. I keep referring to you as Ari, but I should really refer to you as Ari Berkowitz, or you know what I mean? It's just weird. But because we're both Ari. So either way, Ari,
you never refer to yourself in third person, so it's perfect. It's like Ari said this and I said that, and we're both, it's just funny because we both say the same thing. I say I and Ari and you say I and Ari. So it's pretty cool.
That's very true. All right, so Ari Berkowitz went with number 4. Ari Lev went with number 10. I believe, Ari, that it is your turn to have me guess first. Or I guess that means it's my turn to guess first. Less complicating that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I say first, like my number.
I believe that, yes, you are going to have me guess number 4.
All right, so okay,
wow, I really overcomplicated that. To all of our listeners, I apologize.
Yes, so okay, let's get started. So this player is famous for playing with both Tom Brady and Peyton Manning.
Oh, wow. So is this a wide receiver?
It is not a wide receiver. The second clue, as I mentioned last week as well, this player is not a quarterback, and he has some of the most iconic moments of the early 2000s.
Oh, I know who it is. It's got to be Adam Vinatieri.
There we go. It's Adam Vinatieri. I felt like that guy, now that he's been out of the league for a few years, was not getting mentioned enough. He was just unreal. Like, that guy was like the definition of a legend kicker, and the kind of kicker that comes around maybe every 25 years. And I just wanted to throw him a bone and give him some appreciation. So Adam Vinatieri, you were the greatest of all time as a kicker, in my opinion, and not just mine. And take your, just whatever the word is. But yeah, I wanted to pay some tribute.
Take a bow. And just for our listeners who might not be familiar with what he's done, he is a 4-time Super Bowl champion. He has the second most field goals made in NFL history with 559. And just to be clear, he was a mere 7 field goals made short, and he would have surpassed Mort Anderson, who holds the number 1 field goals made in NFL history with 565. So it is wild to think just how close to history he came. And, to think about the fact that when you are playing with quarterbacks, the likes of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, where if you are now making a decision to either go for it on 4th down and again, we're talking about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady if you are taking them off the field and trusting somebody to kick instead, that just speaks to its own. So I'm with you, Ari. It would be very difficult not to put him in greatest of all time in terms of kickers, if not top 2. So quite impressive of a career. Hell of a career.
It's just wild. The guy had 5 seasons of 90% or better on his field goal kicks. Like that. That's just crazy. Like and it wasn't like he was one of these guys, a Nick Folk type guy that was just automatic from under 40. Like, no, they entrusted him. Some years he was kicking, and this was before it was cool to do it. Some years he was kicking like 5+ 50+ yard field goals, and he had quite the high percentage on those as well. So yes, Adam Vinatieri, you are awesome.
Yes, he is. All right, moving over to number 10. No, it is not Eli Manning, as I mentioned last week. Ari, before I give any sort of clues, do you want to throw a guess at who I might be talking about?
I just keep on seeing the image of DeAndre Hopkins in my head, so I just have to guess DeAndre Hopkins.
So, no, good guess, but no, it is not DeAndre Hopkins.
Cool.
All right, let's start giving you some hints, but let's go with ones that are not as obvious. So, number 1, he led the NFL in receptions. So, obviously, he's a wide receiver. He led the NFL in yards per reception 4 times, and he averaged 17.6 yards per catch for his career.
Oh, wow. That is some hell of a stat. He led the NFL in yards 4 times.
He led the NFL in yards per reception 4 times.
Yards per reception.
He ended his career averaging 17.6 yards per catch.
Those are nuts numbers.
Crazy numbers.
Okay, I'm gonna need another hint because this is like because again, receivers could wear number 10, going back like ages, they could have been wearing 10. So I'm really out in the cold on this one, Ari.
Okay, next hint. He is the first player in NFL history to make the Pro Bowl at 2 different positions in the same year. For our listeners, Ari is blanking and is staring off in the distance and trying to figure this out. Well, I can't just leave dead air. Like, people who are watching this on YouTube, they can see me thinking.
Is it Tyreek Hill?
It is not Tyreek Hill.
He made the Pro Bowl at 2 different positions
in the same year and was the first player to do so.
And were they on the same side of the ball?
No.
So one was offense and the other was special teams or defense.
Correct.
So it was a kick returner and a wide receiver. It was like about sometime in the 2010s, right? This guy was like very hot in the 2010s.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm putting it together now, and I can't picture who the guy is. Can I have my final clue?
Okay, your final clue, and this is going to give it away, but he broke the hearts of every Giants fan on the planet multiple times.
He broke the hearts of Giants. Oh, it's Deshaun Jackson.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. That was awesome. Okay, and that's exactly the thing. Deshaun Jackson, he was a phenomenal player for the period that you highlighted. I so appreciate you bringing him up. That was a great one, Ari, and I appreciate the amount of thought and effort you put into your clues. That made me think very, very hard, and well done.
Thank you. And by the way, it was in 2010 where he did make the Pro Bowl at two different positions, both at wide receiver and as a return specialist.
Yeah, he was a hell of a punt returner.
He has been
as all Giants fans know.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the number of times that man, especially in December 2010, when he had that walk-off 65-yard punt return.
I was
watching. My God, I am still like cringing. I can see the game in my head. I can see that play in my head, and it pains me in this moment to even go ahead and think about that, and it is just wild. The guy did play.
Funny enough, I actually watched that game on your block. Not on your block, but in your neck of the woods. I watched that game at Bennett Ostrov's house. I was watching that game.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And he did play for a whopping 15 seasons, which seems kind of crazy. And again, coming back to his averaging 17.6 yards per catch, thinking about doing that over 15 seasons, especially since he was on different teams, 3 different teams, that is, in his final 2 years, is just absolutely astonishing. And today, for anybody who wants to keep up with what Deshaun Jackson is doing today, he is actually the head football coach for Delaware State University.
Wow. The more you know. Okay, so Ari, what number do you want to pick for next week? I already have my player, so I'll let you start.
Ooh, okay. That was a really fun one. So I need to think of, I'm just going to pull one right out of the hat. 98. I'm going with 98.
Cool. I'm going to go with 16.
Ooh, 16. 16. Yeah. Okay. All right. So hopefully it will be as fun as this one. All right. And with that, if we're talking about things that are fun, let's wrap up this super fun episode of RE Squared. So, guys, one more final reminder. Please go ahead. Go to YouTube. In fact, do it for multiple accounts even. Go on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. The effort it takes to share it on your status or on social media takes very little. In fact, it will take you less time to share it than it will take you to not share it. So go ahead and hit subscribe, hit share, give us a follow on Instagram as well. And of course, find us on your favorite podcast network and give us a 5-star review. So guys, we are getting closer and closer to the NFL season with every episode that we record. So, on behalf of both of us here, peace. We out.